Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're connecting from. I am Sagnik Datta, and I'm part of the Citrix Ready technical marketing team managing the desktop ecosystem. And I would be your host for today's webinar where we have Goliath Technologies with us. So let me welcome you all to the Citrix Ready technical webinar series where we showcase how Citrix and our partners have integrated to deliver valuable products and solutions to common problems faced by our customers. Along with me, I have our main speakers, Jason Moore, Marketing Programs Manager at Goliath Technologies, and Raja Jadeja, who is the VP of Product Management of Goliath Technologies. Moving on, Citrix Ready is an end-to-end technology partner program that showcases and recommends third-party products, solutions, and services that demonstrate compatibility with Citrix products. Customers can easily and quickly find the solutions recommended by Citrix and the Citrix Ready Marketplace, hosted at citrix.com/ready. If you're interested to learn more about our program, you can navigate to the partner program page at citrix.com, which is citrix.com/partner program/citrix ready. Moving on, let me now give you a quick glimpse about Goliath Technologies. So Goliath are our premier Citrix Ready partner, and their integration covers a wide spectrum of our Citrix products like Citrix Zen App, Citrix Zen Desktop, NetScaler, and Zen Server, including hypervisor scenarios such as Hyper-V and vSphere. Goliath Monitoring Solutions addresses head-on the evolving challenges after deploying a virtual servers and VDI environments, and are here to share more of their insights on how to proactively manage the Citrix user experience leveraging their technology. So I'll be rolling over the dice now to our first speaker, but before I do that, let me remind you a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions during our webinar, please use the question panel on the right-hand side, and we will take your questions at the end during our Q&A session. All right. Please welcome our first speaker, Jason Moore, Marketing Program Manager at Goliath Technologies. Hey, Jason, I welcome you to this technical webinar series, and let me now hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. One last point on this slide, as was mentioned, we provide proactive IT operations software. It's purpose-built for the following emerging platforms. Because it's purpose-built, what you'll find throughout the presentation today, and we'll talk about this, is you hear us talk a lot about out-of-the-box functionality. So being purpose-built, it is generally less expensive with more functionality, and it really doesn't matter whether your infrastructure is on-premise, in the cloud, or in a combination of both. So today, in terms of an agenda and a presentation flow, I'll go through just a couple of slides to provide a little bit of context and an overview of the technology and how we focus on end-user experience. Then I'm going to turn it over to Raja to do a demonstration of the technology. So when we talk to our customers and we talk to them about end-user experience, we ask them, could you define for us what it means to proactively manage end-user experience? And they've given us 4 key criteria. They tell us they want us to be able to anticipate, troubleshoot, resolve, and prevent. Provide tools that give them the ability to do that. And you see in those 4 boxes the key functionalities that we've developed, purpose-built, to give them those capabilities. And what we'll do is go through those in a much greater fashion today. Now, our focus on being proactive has given us the ability to attract a large number of customers, especially in the last 48 months. And what you should take away from this slide, everyone has one, maybe not so nice, but everyone has one. And you'll see from this slide, our products can scale to some of the largest organizations in the world, but has a price and ease of use profile that give us the ability to be used even by small to medium-sized businesses. Now we bring 3 products to market, the Logon Simulator, IT Analytics for NetScaler, and the Performance Monitor. Today we'll be talking about 2 of those technologies, the Logon Simulator and the Performance Monitor, both of which are fully integrated. Now, let's get into the meat of the presentation. What we're really here to talk about today is how to proactively get ahead of end user experience issues and manage to that. So when we if you talk to 100 administrators, 99 of them will tell you that when they're contacted by end users are calling because one of three areas they're stuck in: either logon initiation, they can't log on to their application; trouble or slowness in the logon process; or an issue with latency or session performance. And that's what our technologies are focused on. That's what our customers have wanted. And as we say here, we have technologies that's built by systems administrators for systems administrators. So there's a lot of confusion when we're talking to people about ICA and HDX, and just sort of to clarify, though most everything has been branded HDX, the ICA channel has three component parts that are HDX. The point with our technology is that we can see all of these channels. If there is slowness, if there is latency, we're able to dig down and see each one of these channels. Again, going back to a product that's built by administrators for them to help them out with issues, we asked them what their requirements were if we were going to build a comprehensive ICA HDX latency monitoring tool to give them the ability to be proactive. They told us the following requirements, and you see those listed there. I won't go over all of them, but the whole idea is to anticipate, troubleshoot, resolve, and ultimately have the data to prevent ongoing issues. And we'll talk about that functionality today. I don't want to spend too much time in the slides. We also provide a tremendous amount of end user experience reporting. These are some of the reports. Raja will go through others. All of this is right out of the box, part of being purpose-built. Now, managing end user experience is a lot more than just ICA and HDX. That's a component part of it. So what we do is provide our administrators with end-to-end visibility. If you look at the 5 panels across the bottom of the slide, we pull together metrics, again, all out of the box because it's purpose-built, information regarding end user experience, the Citrix infrastructure, applications, all the supporting infrastructure, including the NetScaler, NVIDIA, vGPU cards, and if you're a hospital or health system, I know a number of you are here on there, we have customized EMR, EHR modules. We bring all of that up into a series of real-time dashboards, historical reports, and you can look at that information on great-looking displays. Now, we also plug in to Zen Center and vCenter, and knowing, of course, that the Citrix delivery infrastructure is really part of an overall IT strategy, we give you the ability to integrate into enterprise frameworks and other monitoring tools. So I'm going to turn it over to Raja to go through a demonstration of how we are able to leverage our technologies to manage end user experience.
Thanks so much, Jason. So in the course of our demonstration itself, what I'm going to be focusing on is we actually had a couple of use cases with end users and customers actually where they're receiving complaints about logon failures, logons taking too long, session performance issues. And so what they really needed was something that would allow them to get a little bit more proactive and ahead of these problems. They didn't want to always be chasing the issues that were taking place. So they wanted to have some way of actually simulating these conditions to get down and to be able to identify the root cause, identify if there's any kind of location-specific issues as well. This was a customer that had multiple locations and branch offices. In terms of logon slowness, they needed to be able to get down to understand what the logon process was so they can actually see where the slowness was taking place in the stages. Also, they wanted to be able to get down to root cause of what was causing it. Was it their group policies that they set up and configured? Was it a script that was executing incorrectly? Was it going to the wrong domain controller, etc.? And then be able to get down into session level performance analysis as well. Some of the cases in terms of general end user experience issues, which is the focus of what we're talking about, these issues were taking place not just at logon and trying to get in, but also once they were in the session itself. So being able to look into the ICA channel to get a better idea of the utilization of it and correlate back the user activity to what was actually the root cause in the underlying infrastructure, which is where most of the problems ended up being. Being able to tie that back was really, really important for them. So as we transition into the technology, what we're actually going to take a look at is just the the actual root cause of logon problems, get down to the logon process analysis, and then the actual session experience itself. So let's actually transition into the technology, and we'll take a look at exactly that. And in just a few moments, you'll see my screen here, and you'll see the technology itself. So what we're looking at now on the display, it should be coming up in the next few seconds, is the Logon Simulator dashboard. And what we have in front of us is the actual dashboard itself. We're seeing the simulations that are taking place. And in fact, if you take a look starting at the top left-hand side, this dashboard is breaking down all the different applications or desktops that we're simulating. We're going to have the location from which they're actually deployed out to, that the simulations are taking place from, the different types of users, as well as the location as well. If the simulations take place successfully, this display is going to tell us exactly how long they took, looking over to the right-hand side, the overall availability of the application itself. When the failure took place, they'll turn red. We'll get alert notifications to it as well. In the case of our customer, we actually deployed this out to each one of their sites. And by deploying it out to those different locations, we're able to get back some of those location-specific issues. We set it up to run as different types of users, as an administrator, as an account rep, as an executive assistant, as an executive. So all those different types of users are set up so we can kind of mimic the types of different user profiles and security settings along the way. So we had a better idea as to the overall availability of the application. And then we had it scheduled to set up to run starting at like 6 o'clock in the morning before users started to come in to start running automatically. And then from there, persist throughout the day. So for some of their Tier 1 applications like SAP, some of the productivity apps like Word and Excel and PowerPoint and IE that had to be always available. They wanted to know in advance of a user calling in if there was a problem with accessing it. And so we set this up to actually go through the process of launching those applications, especially every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes throughout the day. The whole point being that the Logon Simulator gets the ability to pick it up first and not get notified by the end users. So what would happen actually, I'm actually going to bring up so you can see what the simulation does in real life. Now, this is actually going to be something we set up at a customer's location. This is at a hospital. There had a specific application being hosted, Cerner in this case, and so they had a number of those Cerner applications that had to be available. They had this set up to run repetitively so that they could see if there's a problem taking place, they wanted to know about it. If, say, a change took place on the network side of things and suddenly no one can sign in, they needed objective evidence to be able to actually see that. And that's exactly what the simulator provides. So I'm bringing up, and I'm going to pause it along the way so I can explain what the simulation is doing. But the first thing it does, as you see on the screen, is it brings up the actual login page, in this case for Cerner. They're using web interface to deliver it through the NetScaler. And so this is deployed out to a hospital location on the floor, signing in from that location, connecting into Cerner to actually try and launch, make sure the application is available for the actual doctors and nurses and administrators and analysts. So in this case, you can see it pass through the username and password at the bottom here. Then it's going to go ahead and try and sign in. At this point, it's actually going to start looking for the applications. You can see all the ones that are out here, like Bedrock and SurgeonNet and the Clinical View and PowerChart. And then once it finds the application it's trying to launch, bear in mind, this is set up to launch all of these different applications, but it's going to do so successfully, just like a user would go in and sign in and actually try and launch it. So it's going to go through each one. And you can see at the bottom here that it's been clicked on. You can see that the circle, the disk that actually rotates is taking place. So really what we're doing is not so much simulating a session as simulating the users and what the user is actually able to do. So this has actually gone in. It's actually launched the application. We saw a flash of the receiver. It's bringing up the application now, trying to sign into it. And now the application is up, and it's come up successfully. At that point, it's going to stop the simulation. It's going to log off once it's finished launching all the applications that it needs to. On the dashboard, like we were just looking at, you can see how the logon duration was for those successful sessions. We can see the session host that it was established to. If there are failed, you can see at the top that it turned red, and we would have gotten the alert notification to it. They had to set up to run over and over and over again, just like we did at our customer in our scenario as well. The whole goal, again, was to make sure they saw the problems first. They also wanted to have that objective evidence. So when users called up saying there was a problem, they need to know, is there a problem that's affecting everyone, a macro issue? Or if everything was set up correctly and the users followed the right process, would it potentially be successful, or is it suddenly longer? And this provided that type of detail for them. Not that they would have necessarily told the users that they were lying or they were wrong, but having that type of validation as well is a great way for them to know what was going on. And so taking a moment just to see some of the detail that we can see from the simulation itself, we can actually dig down into these to find out when these problems are taking place, what's going on. So in the case of a simulation that failed to take place, we can actually click down into these details and see exactly what was happening on the screen. So we can see the entire process of signing in. And along the way, we're going to validate, is the NetScaler responding? Can we actually authenticate? Is the storefront or web interface going to respond and allow us through? And then in this case, we start looking for this application, Microsoft Word, and it goes through, looks for all the published apps, and doesn't find it. So we get an alert notification that Microsoft Word was not found. Now, if it was successful, we would also get an alert notification. We would also be able to come back in here to see what the process was like. So we can actually look into the details here and see, for instance, what was happening. So in this case, we'll go through the whole sequence of events, actually going through the process, bringing it up, connect through it. And then at this point, we can actually see the success, if it was successful in finding it. And then you can see it literally clicking on the application. And then when it comes up, it'll actually match to the content to make sure it's actually fully loading. So we actually were doing an implementation with Facebook. They were running into a problem. They're delivering this out to their developers. They use the Logon Simulator to make sure it's always available. And by using this, they could actually see in some of their web-delivered applications that Citrix is doing everything it was supposed to. It was bringing up the application, it was launching the browser, it was trying to navigate to the page, but the back-end application that was actually connecting to was never responding. So we were able to provide that extra layer of visibility to see that, hey, the back-end application was failing to launch. Citrix did what it was supposed to in launching the app, but the end-user experience was that it didn't work, not because of Citrix, but again, because of that back-end application. So this extra layer of validation that they actually successfully launched is really critical and important. And again, coming back to this, we can just come back to a dashboard that gives us an idea what's working, what's not, be able to sort this information to see is there any kind of different experience on where it's deployed out to the different locations and sites to give us that hard evidence that we need. Now, as an aspect of having the Logon Simulator here, we can see also those logon durations. A great way to find out when users start complaining about slowness. Hey, it's slow today. We're now saying everyone's slow. Again, is it really slow for everyone? This gives us that evidence so we can see it at a high level objectively. What's the slowness really like? We can go to any one of these and see one actually set an alert threshold around the duration. So we can see, hey, it's taking 21 seconds now. The last time it was 19. Triggered off a notification, letting us know that there's a problem with actually signing in, and it's taking a little bit longer. But if we want to dig down a little bit further, go a little bit beyond just knowing when it's taking a long time and having the subjective evidence, we can actually break down that logon process a little bit further. So let's transition forward now into starting to look at the actual XenApps and desktop sessions themselves. Now, by going over to this part of the product, we're going to break down for you, if you look to the top, all the different sessions that are going on. You'll see at the very top of the page, we have all the different app servers, so as well as published apps and desktop. In your virtual desktop, we'll break all that data down. We can see what's going on with the different user sessions that are taking place out there. As we see this information, we can actually get an idea of how are those simulated sessions taking place, because again, these are real Citrix sessions. Right? Because they're real Citrix sessions, we can find out all the metrics around it. Look at the logon time and then dig down into it to find out why was it taking a long time. Or do that for your actual user sessions. Now, what normally takes place when we talk to our end users and our customers when they complain about slowness problems that are occurring, it's not just that, hey, it happened right this second, you can go in and look at it. If it did, that'd be great. You can probably nail down what the problem was almost every single time. But it's difficult to do that, and generally that's not what happens. So when we look into these issues, and they might say, hey, it was slow today, but it's been that way for the last 3 weeks. We can go down to the bottom and search, put in a user account that might have been having a problem, take back this time frame, go back to maybe the beginning of the month, and see all the different user sessions that had occurred, what was taking place over time. And so we can see all those different logon times here for this user. We can see their ICA latency. So taking a step back, when we're working with our users, this display helps provide that type of end user experience. The logon initiation was handled by the Logon Simulator, and now from here we can dig deeper into logon duration and session experience, having all the data right at our fingertips to actually do exactly that. So we're going to see those logon times, as I mentioned, the IC latency, great indicator to slowness problems. We can see where they're signing in from to give us some context. Okay, they said it was slow. Are they coming in from home? Are they signing in from a branch office or the headquarters? Are they at Starbucks and they have a public IP? We see the Citrix receiver version. Maybe they have multiple monitors and they're saying that they're not seeing information correctly. They might have the wrong receiver version to support the right settings. They might be coming into the wrong, see what server they're actually connecting into, see what applications they're launching. So this gives perspective as to the overall experience. And so when we start digging down into why was it taking, say, to begin with the long logon time, we can actually click down into this to find out what that experience is. So when we actually choose those user sessions, it's going to allow us to actually pick up some additional information. So clicking down into it, we can look into the user session, see what the session experience was like. We can see all the different tabs across and all the layers of this user session and experience that we can actually dig down into. We're going to start off with logon duration, but we'll come back to these other ones to talk a little bit more about how the rest of their session experience was once they got in. Now, looking at the logon duration for a moment, we look through this. There's actually 3 specific areas the data is broken down into. At the top, the high-level visibility as to what was happening over the course of the session. We can see how the delivery controller is actually brokering the session through and how it was handling the process. And then at the session host level, once the user got into the session and it turned over to the Microsoft side of things, how was that being handled as well? And so starting at the top here, we can see overall where the time went to. You can see the overall logon time is taking over a minute. It was taking predominantly around the client and server side part of the validation. We can see the group policy processing, the profile load, and the interactive desktop as well, the desktop loading sequence. Now coming down a level, we can see during the brokering sequence, was there any kind of problem from the delivery controller perspective in terms of brokering the session? All these times are all nominal. They're all very low, exactly where we want to see them to be. So for instance, if there was a problem on the broker side and established in the session on the session host, we can see how long that took, which wasn't very long at all. It only about less than a second. If it took time for the ICA file to get downloaded from the web interface, we can see how long that took as well. And then for that matter, we can see any of the resolution times from the XML service, the SCA components. We can also see, for instance, that initial stage from the point of the click to getting handled off into the actual session host was only taking about 3 seconds. So this is a great way to see those different details as to what was taking place along the way. Then we can focus down a layer into what was happening inside a session host. Now in the case of our customer, in the use case we were looking at, they wanted their session times and logon times to be less than 20 seconds. And so by digging into this, we could see exactly what was happening during the sequence of events along the way. The group policy processing, the scripts that they had out there, folder redirection. And so we can see, for instance, which domain controller they connected to, the policy that had to get copied over. In the case of the customer, we saw it taking about 15 seconds for them to copy over all the group policies that they had. So we could see the actual personalization that was taking place at the session host level, the IE settings and home page, the desktop icons. That was taking about 28 seconds in their case. We saw each of the policies that were executing, each one individually. So if there was one of those that was taking more time than the other, it would have been iterated out here. So the demo environments, we're not going to see all those policies. We saw that for the user, so they can see exactly what was causing the logon duration to actually cause a problem. So allow them to get right down to the root cause of it to find out how that was affecting their end user experience. The printer mappings, the drive mappings for local drives that they had access to, each one was broken out at 15 seconds and 12 seconds. And to add context around what was happening when the user was signing in and how it might have been affecting the end user experience, we can see the connection speed and how much bandwidth they were actually they had available to them when the session took place. So in terms of getting down to the logon duration information, identifying the root cause of slowness during the logons, this gave them all the details that they needed to see, that extra layer of visibility at the session host level for group policies that they had set up themselves, for scripts that were executing that were causing the slowness. This gave them all the actionable information that they needed to say, hey, this script is what's causing the problem. This registry extension or personalization process is what's causing the issues. This gave them all the details that they needed to see from that perspective. Now, coming back a layer and moving on towards the actual session experience, right? So we just talked about logon initiation with the Logon Simulator, the Logon Duration process. Now we can dig down into that with the Logon Duration display that we just went into. We'll talk a little bit about reporting around it in just a few moments. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about session experience. The ubiquitous Citrix is slow. And how do we get back to where the root cause is and the underlying infrastructure, what might be causing that to take place. And so coming back to this display and seeing this user sessions, we have visibility to the ICA latency. Now this is a great metric that Citrix provides for us to see where it might be slow from a network performance perspective, the server side performance. This can tell us how those are affecting the end user experience itself, and we can dig down from here to any of those user sessions. Now, these are looking at user sessions not just right now, but historically as well. So if there's any kind of a problem that's taking place, any kind of event that occurred, this is going to allow us to see exactly what was happening along the way and how that was affecting the end user's experience in their session. So looking into these different sessions that are occurring out there, we can dig down into to find out what exactly was happening. So when we click onto one of these sessions, we can actually dig down a layer and see the overall connection performance. We can see the ICA latency, the bandwidth utilization, the network latency, the round trip times. We're able to pick up all this information through the ICA protocol itself to see, for instance, how much was their connection speed. Now, they might have had a gigabit LAN link, but how much were they actually getting for Citrix itself? And this will tell us how that changed over the course of the session itself. Now, bear in mind, we're looking back historically right now still. So if they were complaining about persistent slowness issues, we can look back in time to see how that was changing over time as well. So we're seeing all those performance characteristics here, and we can see, for instance, the ICA latency, and more importantly, we can also see the network latency. Now, we're measuring the network latency for those ICA packets. So this is allowing us to look at it through the ICA protocol to make sure that we're seeing the proper and accurate priority that those packets are getting. And that's important because we can see here now that the network latency is directly impacting the ICA latency. So this gives us all the evidence that we need to know that there's a network problem impacting the experience for the end users themselves. We can also look down into the ICA round trip times and the bandwidth utilization too, if relevant, to find out how that might be impacting it. And in this case, we can see down to those performance levels to see the fact that the performance of those sessions was getting directly impacted by server-side handling of the sessions themselves in terms of what was going on. So this is a great way to get down into what was going on inside of those sessions. And when we transition forward into the ICA channel itself, we can actually open that up to find out what was actually happening inside of those sessions. So looking forward a little bit, we can actually open up the channel itself and start looking inside of it. Now, when we do that, we can see, again, we're bringing forward the connection performance, the ICA latency as well, so we can measure how that behavior might have been impacted by the user's activity. What were they doing inside of those sessions? Were they using up a lot of the display adapter? Are they using up a lot of the printing or copying and pasting content? This allows us to see how that's being used both inbound and outbound. So we have doctors, for instance, that might be using drag and dictation. So we can see how that audio inbound traffic is using it. Is there any kind of contention with any kind of display adapter? In this case, we can see, for instance, the thin wire bandwidth is what's using up all of the bandwidth utilization. In fact, we can turn it on and off here and see how it's directly lining up to the overall bandwidth utilization. In this case, thin wire bandwidth is the display adapter for Citrix. So we can see how much is being consumed of the thin wire to actually deliver the session itself. Now, if there's any kind of a bandwidth problem or any kind of a connection speed issue that might be impacting it, like we're consistently spiking up and leveling out at the top end in terms of bandwidth utilization, it would be potentially because of connection performance. And so we can reflect this back against the connection speed itself to see if that's resulting in any ICA latency. If there's any kind of other channels that are being used, they'll dynamically appear here at the bottom. So if they're printing off large files, if they're speaking or recording content, we can see that traffic that's coming inbound as well. Now, all this traffic that's taking place, we can also match that back up to what the result is in terms of resource availability and provisioning resources. So starting with the actual GPU performance, so in this case, we might be using the grid card to make sure that there's a proper resources available. We can actually dig down into it. Now, in this session, there's not a lot of grid card performance usage, but what we would actually see from a session that did is we'd actually see the compute utilization. We also see the power utilization as well. So this allows us to find out what's happening inside those grid cards in terms of performance in that. And in terms of that part of it, we can see the frames per second. We can also see the compute utilization over time and the memory usage as well. So this is allowing us to see a little bit deeper information as to what's happening inside that grid card and is it being able to be maximized to ensure that a good experience is taking place. We are also giving you the encoding information and the maximum frame per second, so you can see if there's any kind of policy settings that might be impacting the user experience or maximizing the session itself. Now, when we see this information, it's great to see the frames per second, that experience. We need to tie that back to what the user is actually doing inside of the session. So coming back into the product here, we can see the application level experience as well. So we can see that Chrome, for instance, is using up a tremendous amount of CPU resources. What the throughput is to the actual I/O as well. If you recall, going back to the ICA channel, we can see what that bandwidth utilization is, and we can see it's getting to around 2 megabits per second at the end here. And so when we come back to the application performance, we can see that 1.8 megabit per second is coming from Chrome itself, so we can see the throughput. We can also see the IOPS. It's a tremendous amount of IOPS that's coming through this application itself. So it's giving all the context now. We can stitch together from the connection performance to the actual ICA channel with the user's behaviors inside of it, the grid card of how that's playing into the performance, and then the application layers of what's actually taking place. We're working our way through all those layers. Now, in terms of how this is impacting back from a resource availability, is it having enough resources to support this user? Well, we can go back to the server level performance and bring in information from the hypervisor and the Windows layer as well to see if there's any kind of bottleneck that's taking place. And so looking at this user, we have an API integration back to Citrix Zen server in this case to actually bring in those metrics. We can do the same thing for the other hypervisors as well. We can see the resource provisioning that's taking place here in terms of CPU memory usage, how that's trending over time. We can also see the from a deeper layer in terms of the context switches. There are a lot of threads or activity or requests coming from the session host itself. How is the CPU keeping up with the requests coming to it? Any kind of paging or hard pages that might be taking place that might result in a problem for those users. Looking at storage performance, we can look at throughput, the queue length, and latency as well. So all these different metrics are really critical to understanding what the performance is like. We actually had a case with a customer where they were seeing slowness that was affecting the end users. Screens were freezing. It was getting stuck all the time. Same thing with the customer that we're talking about right now. What we saw from here actually was that the latency was getting up to like 5,000 milliseconds, 4,000 milliseconds, 2,000 milliseconds, 7,000 milliseconds, frequently and persistently. And we had alert notifications set up, so we instantaneously sent alert notifications saying that there's high latency. Now, unfortunately, from a Citrix and admin's perspective, they couldn't just go with that component of it. They had to be able to say, what else is happening on that Citrix session? Is everything normal from that perspective? And being able to look into all these layers, pick up this information from inside the session, allow them to prove that everything was fine in terms of the Citrix performance itself. IC latency was nominal, application performance was perfect, was normal, CPU memory allocation was normal, so they'd sized everything from Citrix correctly. All the policies that were applied from the GPU perspective were set up correctly as well. There's no problems in terms of the ICA channel in terms of delivering resource availability. So everything was normal from that perspective. The only place where there was a problem that was taking place was getting into this disk level performance. They could even open up in terms of network performance to see if there's any kind of bandwidth issues that were happening, any kind of network packet loss that might have been taking place, and retransmits that were occurring. So this helped provide that type of visibility to make sure they knew what was actually taking place and where those problems were really coming from. So this was critical for them. And then they were able to go back and see, for instance, actually, when they went back to the storage team and they looked into it, they had snapshot-based backups taking place between 10:30 and 1:30 in the morning every Friday. That's why every Friday it was always slow, and the rest of the week it was fine. And this was critical to that process. So over the last couple minutes here, especially talking about session performance, we went into a couple different areas here. We talked a little bit about the ICA channel and digging down into it, the session performance. We looked at the application layer, the Windows layer, the hypervisor layer, how we bring all that together so we can drill down through all those different layers to find out what's going on. That allows us to confirm that the performance is the way that it should be, or identify what aspect of the delivery architecture is preventing or prohibiting the performance of Citrix itself. So you can say that it's not really a problem with Citrix, it's a storage problem, or it's a network problem in routing when we saw the high network latency, or an application behaving not the way that it should be. So this is a key data that we can provide and give back to you so that you can go back and make sure that those different teams fix the problems that are impacting your users. Now, as an aspect of all of this, we have alerts that actually get generated so you don't have to necessarily walk through the screens and dig for the information. We have reports that can come right into your inbox. And so transitioning over to the reporting for just a moment, talk a little bit about the reports that we have built into the technology itself. So looking at those reports, we have reports that look at the application performance, then apps and desktop, all the different architectures, all the different components underneath it, analyzing for any kind of profile or printing or registry or group policy issues, as well as connection-related issues. And these reports can be scheduled to run automatically. You can get them. You can receive these reports weekly or daily or monthly as you need to run them. So just to take a look at a couple of them, for instance, we can run them from here, get an idea of what the end user experience is like. Look into the end user experience information so we can find out what the users are seeing in their sessions, to the users, their applications. We can see where they're coming from, how long it took to log in, the ICA latency, the speed of their connection. We can also look into the Logon Duration data to see how long it's taking to actually get into the environment itself. So for all those users, we can break down all the different stages and then even open up further to find out what was happening inside of it, so that you can produce a report, hand it off to someone to say, here's what's happening. They can look where it's actually coming from. So they're making group policy changes. They can see what the policies we're actually taking to execute if necessary. We also have our end-to-end connection reports that let you break down all the user sessions, how they're connecting through, seeing over on the right-hand side the ICA latency that they got, how long it took, and the process that they took to actually get into the environment itself. And then our end-user activity report. This helps give you some perspective as to what users are actually doing inside those sessions. So Verizon Wireless, for instance, runs these reports to get an idea when users are requesting information back about from the or additional resources. They ask for additional desktops, how much is truly being used or consumed. We have some insurance companies that use it to actually validate that how much are the actual workers actually using the technology and therefore working in the environment for billing purposes. So this helps provide a type of visibility to understand what the users are actually up to inside of those sessions, how much is actively being consumed. So if they got on at 8 o'clock, logged off at 5, but really at 9 o'clock they disconnected and started playing solitaire, and 4 o'clock they got back on to finish off their work, we'll show the 2 hours that they were actually in there and actually spending time in those sessions. So these reports are all really critical to that process to make sure that they can actually see what's happening. Now the last piece I want to touch on, of course, is the alerting. We can get these reports, we can look into the actual sessions themselves, we can actually get alerts on all the different characteristics that we saw today. That actually comes from our built-in alerts that we have in the product itself. We have rules set up, automatically analyze your environment, start looking for problems, whether they're Logon Duration slowness issues, or ICA latency as an indication of slowness problems that are taking place, or application crashes and hangs, looking at the underlying infrastructure and components that are taking place. We can actually set up alerts around it to make sure that you get notified when these events take place. So we can even set up an alert notification for you if ICA latency goes over a certain threshold for duration of time. We can set up around Logon Duration issues as well, so if it's taking too long. These values here are pretty low. These are not the default ones that we have that we ship with. This we have set up for our demo environment just to make sure we have something to show you guys. But you can actually have these defined. So some of our larger hospitals, for instance, where they need to have logons taking place for Cerner or Epic in less than 12 seconds or 10 seconds. They actually have Logon Duration defined here. So they want to know to start getting to those values. So they can get alerted to that immediately. They have optimal settings for all their users on a per server basis. So they might want to know if they get up to 30 users on a XenApp server. They can set thresholds around that, because once that hits that mark, the experience for the users might be getting into a state where it's going to start infecting each other. And when these events take place, when it hits these thresholds, we can set remediation actions around it as well. So perhaps if appropriate, say getting to around 30 users, we can actually send a remediation action to go and execute and disable logons to that server until it starts getting lowered down a little bit, and then it gets enabled again. So we can do some custom actions and automation and self-healing in the environment to ensure that the users are having a good experience, that it's automated so that it doesn't have to result in a situation that we have to wait for a user to come in and actually, or an engineer to come in and actually make these adjustments manually. It can be completely automated before users even know about it. Common issues around like printing, for instance, we can clear problems with printing, restart those services, get them back up and running again. We could set values around Logon Duration time to get notified if there's a problem taking place. You can go in and actually take a look at it, as well as any of these other conditions around thresholds for the infrastructure that might contribute to these end user experience issues as well. That's all done from these alerts, so you can get notified instantly when a problem takes place. There's no delay. The moment the problem happens, you're going to get notified about it. And for our customers, that's exactly what we did. We said once we got these problems, we got down to the root cause, we identified where these problems were coming from. We put thresholds in place, set up alert notifications so that they knew if it happened again, instantly they would be able to go in and start identifying these conditions. And so, Jason, just coming back to the just coming back to the actual slide for just a moment. That's actually what we did. In looking at the actual users themselves, we can actually see all the different events that took place and how they use the technology, start getting ahead of it, start preventing the problems from taking place. They started with the Logon Simulator. They started running it first thing in the morning just to make sure that they were actually having good experiences. So they prevented it from actually preventing it from actually running into problems that users before they actually started signing in, starting to get ahead of those problems, using that logon process to actually start fixing problems with their policies and group policies that were slowing down logon times, as well as looking into session performance issues to start properly and actually adjusting resources, fixing problems with the storage layer, and networking to fix those routes that were actually causing slowness to take place.
We're done.
So that's it for the slides and the demo portion itself, and we're ready for the Q&A. And if anyone out there on the line, if they have any questions, I suggest you put it into the chat window, into the questions box. We're going to have to answer anything that you might have. So for instance, if you have, and by the way, if you like to download a free 30-day trial, you're more than welcome to do so. If you want to schedule a personal demo, you can follow those links or contact us using the information below.
So Citrix, if you want to pull the questions and ask them, we'll certainly field them, either Raj or myself. Jason. Okay. There are a few questions that have come in that I'm seeing here. So Raj, first question, can you create alerts? Can you create alerts around session slowness?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had the ability to set up alerts around session slowness using either logon duration based issues, ICA latency, end user experience metrics, if it fails to log on. So all those different conditions around end user experience and certain session slowness as well are supported.
Okay. The other is, next question, some of the coworkers want to see, we're absolutely going to send a recording of the webinar. That'll be coming out from Citrix. Next question, Raj, this is for you. We're a health system with 20 remote locations. Do you have any health systems our size using the Logon Simulator from that many locations? I think I've heard that question before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great use case actually for the Logon Simulator, and our customers exactly do it that way. We actually have a national customer that has a couple hundred locations across the country. They set it up at each one of those sites, and actually multiple at each one of those locations, a simulator to each floor to find out if there's any kind of location-specific performance issues, and certainly how that change is taking place from floor to floor. So certainly deploy the Logon Simulator to all those locations to get some objective evidence of what's going on from each one of those sites.
Yeah, and from a size perspective, that's not a large number of remote locations for us. We feed your data into Splunk. Not only can you feed the data into Splunk, but our product can either send messages to virtually any ticketing system you have, to other monitoring solutions, and not uncommon for us to be sending information to SCOM, to HP OpenView, CA Unicenter, BMC, even SolarWinds, the networking utility. Now that's one way. The other way is that you can open up our APIs. Verizon Wireless is one such customer that literally opens up our APIs, and we sort of disappear in the background and pipe all the information up to their central console in the NOC. Next question, must there be an endpoint configured in a remote location to run the Logon Simulator, Raj?
If you're looking to get some data from that site, then you would need to deploy, it's just a small Logon Simulator agent. It's only a couple megabytes, run on any Windows box to actually run from that location. And then that's how we'll get the data as far as how that site and location is actually taking place. If you're, for managed service providers and larger companies, sometimes they need to just validate that the experience is going to work correctly. And so they might actually deploy it locally as well. And that's how they actually work with actually deploying it. There's a lot of different options based on location dynamics of how we can actually deploy it to achieve your goals.
Can this tool measure performance of applications outside of Citrix like Office 365 or SAP? And really, the fact, if we measure everything you saw today, we can measure on any application that's being delivered through Citrix. That's the key thing. So we're not an application performance monitoring tool. We complement them quite often, but we do all of this analysis and give you all of this information on any Citrix delivered application. Is this experience for both NetScaler and F5?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually don't have a dependency to those or versions of those. We certainly support them all, but we don't have a dependency there to actually provide this type of visibility. So if you're using F5 or if you're using the NetScaler, we can still provide all of this information, or even if you're not using it at all, either one.
Is this product a complete replacement for EdgeSight?
So a combination of the Logon Simulator as well as the Goliath Performance Monitor, our customers have been able to achieve exactly that by bringing forward actually some things that have been deprecated in EdgeSight that we now support, like some of those visibility to Logon Duration, the ICA level visibility, and then tying it back to what we've done by bringing the rest of the architecture, like the hypervisor visibility that's not there. Our customers have been able to achieve exactly that.
And what makes the product unique from Citrix Director? And we get this question all the time because Director's a great utility that comes with certain versions of Citrix, and we really complement Director. If you like Director and you like the idea around Director, you'll really love our technology. So whether it's logon simulation, whether it's monitoring the entire Citrix delivery infrastructure, remember, Director will give you certain aspects of the information. What we do is look at the entire Citrix delivery infrastructure down to the virtual machines, the physical servers, network elements, all of the elements that deliver a Citrix end user experience, and not just the Citrix elements. And that's really the highest level comparison of the two. Here's a question. We're getting a lot of these service provider questions. We're a service provider offering hosted desktops. Can we use your product for troubleshooting? That's a very common use case, isn't it, Raj?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the strengths of the technology, the fact that we can actually be deployed out there, bringing all this information so you can find out what's actually happening in the environment itself. So yeah, absolutely, in that type of scenario, we can support multiple customers. We might be providing this information for different types of customers and bring this data together for you.
And Raja, all of this information, all of the reports that you referred to today are all, just to confirm, out of the box?
Yeah, absolutely. So all those reports that I mentioned, as well as more of them, are actually all out of the box. You don't have to do anything to get them set up. You just need to decide when you want to actually get them.
And the Logon Simulator, does the Logon Simulator simulate both, or can you determine logon duration and session performance issues with a simulated user as well as a real user?
Yeah, so that's one of the strengths of our technology versus some of the other solutions out there, is the fact that we're creating full Citrix sessions, fully launching the sessions through the actual NetScaler itself, the profile, the group policy that are going through. So we'll get all the details in terms of the logon duration and the ICA latency as well.
Okay. And what's the licensing model? You can take a look. It's a la carte licensing, frankly. So you can license per XenApp server, per desktop, per virtual server. And we would encourage you to go to our website at goliathtechnologies.com and look at pricing at the right upper hand level. And you'll be able to see the entire pricing. Just fill in your inventory, and it will offer you a quote. Another question here, Raja, is can you talk a little bit about the self-healing feature in the technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have some automation remediation capabilities for that. that help our customers get ahead of problems and start doing some self-healing. So our customers use that in a lot of different ways. First and foremost is to help automate the whole sequence from when a problem takes place to when it gets resolved to mitigate the impact of those end users to the point where they might not even know a problem even took place. So we can really execute there's some built-in functionality, like simple things like restarting services, actually going a little bit further than that to actually identify applications that might be leaking CPU and memory, actually stopping them and restarting them. We can also perform really any kind of scripted action you want. So if you're leveraging PowerShell at all, we can perform any kind of action that a PowerShell script can actually do, or a C script, or a VB script, or really any other scripting language itself. So you can actually do a lot with the technology. We can identify the problems, and then because we can identify those issues, we can actually automate that resolution to get it back up and running.
Okay. Next question. Are you able to set up email alerts for service monitoring like low disk space, VDA registration failures, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do support getting that. We can definitely set alerts around that, and even remediations too. Really, anything that we can alert on, we can do remediation for. But at a very simple answer, yes, we can certainly identify low disk space. We can do real-time event log monitoring. So in those Zen desktops for your VDAs, where you might be having them, they might be non-persistent, you might lose those logs. We'll pull that information in real time. So you can always go back and do analysis of it, set up alerts around that as well. We can even alert on registration issues, and if they're unregistered, restart the VDA service so it checks back in correctly.
Okay. Just a couple more questions before we hand it back to Citrix. How do you compare to Logon VSI? Logon VSI is a great product. We coexist with Logon VSI. We're very different. So the difference is really that we log on and test the entire Citrix delivery infrastructure, whether it's from a remote location or locally, and that's very important because what an administrator will tell you is that everything's fine until people start to log on. It's getting the entire Citrix delivery infrastructure, and that includes the underlying virtual machines, etc., to work in concert, the network elements, Active Directory, the back-end SQL databases, all of those things to work in concert. That's what will be able to manifest a problem. In addition to that, because the Logon Simulator is, and this is the only product out there like it, is fully integrated with the Goliath Performance Monitor, we can tell you not only that there is going to be a problem, but where that problem is. So if you're having a profile that's not loading, which has nothing to do with Citrix but tracks back to Active Directory, we'll be able to tell you that. So you can find the root cause of the issue very, very quickly.
Great.
And we'll pass it back over to you. Any questions we did not get answered today, we'll send you to email. We'll send you in an email. So I'll turn it back to you.
Hey,
at
thanks.
Citrix.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thanks, Jason and Raj, for covering the Q&A session. I think everyone here learned a lot today, and the webinar was super packed. So as Jason mentioned, we will be definitely sharing the recording with all the registered email IDs within a day or two. Feel free to share this among your coworkers who would be interested to know about this and leverage the key insights that were shared today. With that said, we are about to end our webinar today. I want to take a moment and thank our speakers, Jason and Raja, for Goliath Technologies, for making this a fantastic presentation and sharing their knowledge with us. And last but not the least, I want to thank each one of you who are attending our webinar today in Citrix Ready Technical Webinar Series. And this concludes our broadcast. Thank you.